The command center at Aurora Tech was thick with tension. The $8 billion asset management system flashed catastrophic errors. Engineers slumped. "It's irreversibly corrupted," one whispered. Aria Sterling, the 31-year-old billionaire, watched. She stood, arms crossed, cold as steel. Walking out, she almost collided with Daniel Cole, a single dad in faded coveralls replacing a light bulb. Aria looked him up and down. "What do you know about this system?" Daniel replied. "Maybe more than you think." Aria gave a half smile. "Fine. Fix it in 30 minutes. Succeed, I pay $200,000. Laughter erupted. The janitor fixing a billionaire system? Daniel set his toolbox down. Deal. 30 minutes. Daniel Cole's life was an exercise in silent sacrifice and quiet, grinding dedication. He was a single father to Lily, a sweet, bright 7-year-old girl. His entire world was measured in school pickups, dinner preparation, and ensuring he never missed her bedtime story. Earning enough to keep their small life afloat was his singular, sacred mission. Every decision he made, every extra hour he worked, was filtered through the single, all-important question: is this secure for Lily? Is this stable? A life ago, Daniel had been known by a different title, a top-tier principal data security engineer, responsible for multinational defense contracts. He possessed a terrifying brilliance for complex network systems that few on Earth could match. But he had walked away from that high-stakes, high-pressure world years ago. His wife, the love of his life, had died in a tragic, high-profile system failure, a public infrastructure system that was compromised and faulty. The grief, compounded by the technical guilt of knowing he couldn't protect her from a technological flaw, had been overwhelming. Daniel had sworn off the kind of work that held such catastrophic potential. He chose maintenance, a simple, stable job with predictable hours. It paid the bills, it was emotionally safe, and, crucially, it kept him close enough to home and Lily's school. At Aurora Tech, he was the man who fixed the lights, the faulty climate control, and the sticky elevator locks, a necessary but entirely dismissed figure. In the eyes of the corporate elite, Daniel was practically invisible. They never bothered to learn his name. They simply referred to him with derision: the light bulb guy, the plumber, or the maintenance man. They saw his coveralls, his quiet manner, and his steady routine, and they inferred a massive failure of ambition. They assumed he lacked the intelligence or the drive to hold any position of true value, casting him aside as a man who had completely given up on his potential. Aria Sterling was the polar opposite. She was a living legend in the tech world before she hit 30, CEO, founder, and primary shareholder of a company that controlled the financial infrastructure of half a continent. She was fiercely intelligent, razor-sharp, and infamously, cold as polished steel. Aria grew up in a world of hyper-competition where weakness was lethal. She believed in only one metric: total, unforgiving excellence. Sentiment was a liability she had systematically purged from her personality. Today, her empire was hemorrhaging value. The $8 billion asset system, the very spine of Aurora Tech's operations, was paralyzed. The failure was not a mere bug. It was a total lockdown of the central codebase. 12 of her most highly paid senior engineers, PhD, and industry veterans, had spent 5 agonizing hours failing to restart it. They looked pale, defeated, and terrified. One lead engineer, his voice trembling with fear and frustration, delivered the final verdict. "The core code is corrupted from the inside, Ms. Sterling. It is an architectural failure designed to be unfixable. It cannot be restored." Aria said nothing. She walked to the console, picked up the control pad, and simply slammed it onto the glass desk. The crash echoed through the silent, enormous room like a gunshot. "You have all wasted my time. Get out." Her fury was cold, controlled, and far more terrifying than any shouting. She strode out of the command center, her black heels clicking sharply on the polished marble. That was when she spotted Daniel. He was standing on a ladder, diligently replacing a flickering fluorescent bulb in the adjacent corridor. His existence was the antithesis of the multi-billion-dollar panic she was currently experiencing. A sudden, fleeting thought of dark amusement crossed Arya's mind, a way to vent her searing frustration at the incompetence she had just witnessed. "You," she commanded, pointing at Daniel with an imperious finger. "You fix broken things. You fix all the mundane, broken things here, correct?" Daniel stopped working, looking down with calm, unhurried ease. "Yes, Ms. Sterling. I maintain the physical infrastructure. And that," she gestured toward the war room where the $8 billion error screen still glowed menacingly. "Can you fix that multi-billion-dollar asset system? The one my 12 highly credentialed experts cannot touch?" Her tone was laced with heavy, cutting sarcasm, a clear public humiliation ritual. A wave of loud, disrespectful snickering rolled out from the war room. They thought the CEO was making a joke at the maintenance man's expense. But Daniel's reply was utterly unexpected. It was calm, measured, without any hint of fear. "I couldn't say, Ms. Sterling. I haven't looked at the code yet." Arya paused, the smirk freezing on her face. Her eyebrow arched slightly. This was not the timid, bowing employee she expected. The absolute confidence in his quiet reply, the challenge in his eyes stopped her cold. Her anger mutated into a dangerous high-stakes game. "Fine, let's elevate this folly," Arya announced, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. "I will grant you access. You have precisely 30 minutes. If you fail, you're fired immediately, effective now. If you succeed, you receive a $200,000 bonus. Deal?" Daniel didn't flinch at the threat. He had faced far more terrifying odds. He was more afraid of failing to provide for Lily than he was of the CEO's wrath. He simply nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "Deal." He slowly climbed down the ladder. He meticulously placed his toolbox on the floor. He then peeled off his worn, greasy maintenance gloves. In the stunned silence, Daniel Cole, the light bulb guy, walked into the command center, his back straight, under the contemptuous, disbelieving gaze of the most powerful people in the room. Daniel walked toward the central console. It was a dizzying, multi-layered network of security firewalls, proprietary protocols, and thousands of lines of code flashing in rapid, hostile red succession. The air was frigid, the silence weighted down by professional doubt and mounting scorn. A software expert, Dr. Chen, whispered to his colleague, his voice thick with condescension. "He's probably looking for the restart button. Does he even know how to read the Python layers? He probably thinks the command line is an email interface." Mr. Thompson, the chief engineer, folded his arms and scoffed, loud enough for Daniel to hear. "This is a waste of 30 minutes. He probably thinks this is fixing a washing machine circuit board." Arya settled back into the main executive chair, crossing one expensive, black-stockinged leg over the other. She enjoyed the impending spectacle, anticipating his rapid, inevitable humiliation. Her fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. "The clock starts now, Mr. Cole. 30 minutes. Daniel didn't immediately touch the keyboard. He stood before the bank of 7 holographic displays, his eyes moving with a practiced, intense focus across the screens. He wasn't looking at the errors. He was looking at the structure. He was reading the failure's intention. 6 entire minutes ticked by in silence. 6 minutes of absolute inaction, while $8 billion hung in the balance. The engineer's smug mockery swelled. He's completely baffled. He's just standing there to stall the timer. He doesn't understand the first line of the code base. Daniel finally spoke, his voice cutting through the thick, judgmental whispers like a scalpel. He still hadn't touched the keyboard. "Your previous attempts were flawed. You failed at the root level, not because of your protocol, but because the attacker anticipated your protocol." Mr. Thompson flushed deep red, his face contorted in anger. "That's outrageous. We attempted 5 layers of standard recovery protocol. The root is untouched, just locked." Daniel finally placed his hands on the keyboard, not with haste, but with quiet, absolute confidence. The entire foundational code was subtly corrupted with a parasitic key, then locked, rendering all standard, public protocols useless. He looked at Arya, his eyes calm. "The failure wasn't random, Ms. Sterling. It was a targeted, surgical strike executed by someone with a permanent master key embedded in the earliest iterations of the code." Arya's casual posture shattered. She sat bolt upright, her interest now intensely personal. A master key? Are you implying a catastrophic internal leak? Or worse, a traitor who had access to the system blueprints before launch? More than a leak, Daniel stated, his eyes glued to the screen as his fingers hovered over the keys. The person who wrote this specific signature of failure understands your system architecture and your personal coding style better than you or your entire existing team. Arya's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced through her past. Her heart hammered against her ribs. There was only one person in the world who fit that description. The man who had been her fiancé, her chief technology officer, and her coding partner 2 years prior. The man who had been the architect of her betrayal. She tightened her jaw, struggling to keep her face impassive. She would not let this janitor see her vulnerability. 17 minutes remained. The system, sensing Daniel's probing, began initiating a deeper, self-destructing lockdown sequence. The red error lights intensified, and a harsh, automated voice echoed, "Integrity breach detected. Initiating core data isolation in T-minus 15 minutes." Daniel ignored the audible warning. He switched to a secondary proprietary input line. His fingers then exploded across the keys. The speed and precision were breathtaking. He wasn't just typing, he was performing an orchestra of commands. His movements were too fast and the code too obscure for the engineers to follow. The young engineer who had scoffed earlier stared at the screen, his mouth wide open in sudden, horrified recognition. That's a AAA layered protocol. He's using military-grade encryption standards. That's a Tier 1 naval procedure. Only a handful of people know that protocol. Daniel ignored the rising panic and the implicit question hanging in the air. He was already several layers deep in the black box. Arya, utterly compelled, stood up. She walked around the desk and leaned over his shoulder, her expensive perfume mingling with the dusty scent of his coveralls. Her voice was low and dangerous. "How do you know naval-level security codes, Mr. Cole? That access is classified." Daniel's typing didn't break rhythm. He didn't look up. He was now operating on pure muscle memory and adrenaline. His voice was low, focused, and utterly final. "Because, Mrs. Sterling, before I fixed lights, I used to write them." The entire room went into a state of shocked, terrifying silence. The janitor, the light bulb guy. The dismissed single father was a former senior architect of national defense systems. 8 minutes left. Daniel found the malicious section of code, the digital signature of betrayal. It was hiding in a perfectly legitimate-looking data structure. 4 minutes. He executed a complex override, bypassing the security lock, forcing the compromised system to create a clean, uncorrupted clone of the $8 billion dataset and reroute it to a shielded offline storage unit. 2 minutes. He went directly into the root directory, injecting a rapid patch restoration file, completely resetting the foundational architecture to a pristine state. 30 seconds. The entire array of holographic screens flickered violently. The menacing red error display suddenly smoothly shifted to a clean, steady, vibrant green. The hostile warning voice shut off. The system was online, fully functional, secure. Daniel slowly pulled his hands away from the keyboard, the intense concentration draining from his face. He looked at the timer. The total time elapsed, 29 minutes, 12 seconds. He looked back at the CEO, who was frozen in place. "I have 48 seconds to spare, Mrs. Sterling." The command center erupted in a simultaneous wave of shock, disbelief, and a grudging admiration. They had never witnessed a technical feat of such speed and precision. The senior engineers who had mocked him minutes ago were now staring at Daniel with the wide-open reverence usually reserved for a mythological figure. He didn't just fix it," Dr. Chen stammered, his eyes glued to the clean code. "He rebuilt the operating environment from the command line up. In under 30 minutes, he's a true genius." Arya, however, felt none of the professional victory. Her eyes were fixed, not on the green screen, but on a single recovered line of code Daniel had exposed. A timestamp marker, buried deep. It was the digital fingerprint, the unique coding style she had once loved. It was the signature of Nathan Thorne, her ex-fiancé, A devastating wave of nausea and profound heartbreak washed over her. The betrayal she had endured was not just a personal slight, it was a physical, existential threat to her entire company. She gripped the edge of the control panel, her knuckles white, struggling desperately to maintain her mask of arrogant control. Daniel turned from the screen, his tone instantly shifting from professional to deeply personal. He sensed her pain. "You know who did this, Miss Sterling. The damage was calculated to look like a critical bug, but it was designed to give the attacker a remote, permanent backdoor." Arya snapped her head up, her eyes blazing with pride despite the visible pain. "I don't need your analysis, Mr. Cole. I know the source of the rot. But you need to understand the threat," Daniel pressed, his eyes holding a profound, gentle empathy that shook her. "This was written by someone who had the patience to embed a kill switch over years. Someone you trusted absolutely, who knew your operational blind spots." Arya's hands began to tremble uncontrollably. She had given him the access he had used to destroy her professionally and personally. Her perfect, meticulously controlled world had been built on a foundation of unforgivable lies. Mr. Thompson, the chief engineer, recovered enough to finally articulate the room's central question. "If you are this skilled, Mr. Cole, and you have these classified credentials, why are you here? Why maintenance?" Daniel fell silent for a long, heavy moment. The noise of the room faded into an expectant silence as he prepared to reveal his greatest pain. "I left the industry 6 years ago. My wife, Sarah. She was a journalist investigating a security breach in a public utility system. The system was maliciously sabotaged to cover up corruption, and she was caught in the resulting catastrophe." The room went utterly silent. The gravity of his confession was immense. It wasn't just technical, it was tragic. Arya looked at him. The coldness in her eyes finally dissolved, replaced by a flicker of true, raw, human sympathy. She saw the truth behind the faded coveralls. Daniel continued, his voice flat, heavy with the weight of that memory. "I was on the team that was supposed to fix that system. I failed. I couldn't save the person I loved the most. I couldn't protect her from a simple piece of malicious code." He met Arya's gaze, his eyes clear. "I swore I would never work on a system that could potentially harm a human life again, but I can stop this system from killing anyone else's dream." His immense skill was not a professional boast, it was a scar, a lifelong, desperate mission to prevent similar tragedies. Arya felt a lump form in her throat. She, the proud, unyielding billionaire, was moved to her core. She saw a man who carried his immense power, not as a source of glory, but as a devastating, sacred burden. He was the antithesis of the power-hungry men who had surrounded her. Suddenly, an intern rushed back into the room, holding a frantically flashing tablet. "Ms. Sterling, we have a critical alert. The remote wipe attempt was just a distraction. We're detecting a live, direct, physical console login in the sub-level 2 server room. The hacker is trying a manual data wipe now." Arya's composure finally evaporated into genuine terror. "He's physically in the building? Now?" Daniel was already moving. "The attacker knew I would fix the code. He's going for the physical kill switch before I can finish the quarantine protocol." Server room Gamma. Fear swept through the room. Daniel sprinted toward the door. Arya started to follow, but her chief security officer grabbed her arm, restraining her. "CEO, you cannot risk a physical confrontation. This is a criminal threat." Arya violently shrugged him off, her eyes blazing with a mixture of terror and fierce determination. "He betrayed my trust once. He will not destroy my company twice. This is my battle." In the dimly lit, fiercely humming server room Gamma, Daniel confronted the figure frantically working at a console. It was Nathan Thorne, Arya's ex-fiancé, sweat pouring down his face as he desperately plugged a specialized hard drive into a legacy port. Thorne looked up, his face twisted in rage. "The janitor? You don't know what it's like to lose everything. I'm taking back what I deserve." Daniel remained perfectly calm, blocking the only exit. "You lost your position and your future because you lacked integrity. Your loss is self-inflicted." Thorne, panicking, ripped the hard drive out and lunged for the door. Daniel moved with the explosive, controlled precision of a trained security specialist. He didn't fight dirty, he fought efficiently. The two men wrestled violently between the hot server racks, the metallic scent of ozone thick in the air. Thorne was driven by desperation, but Daniel was powered by a deeper, colder resolve, the memory of a white coffin. Arya reached the doorway just in time to witness the struggle. She screamed, but no sound came out. Her heart pounded in her chest, not for the data, but for Daniel's safety. She had never felt such sheer physical panic. Daniel finally leveraged his training, slamming Thorne's arm into a precise lock and pinning him face down onto the cold metal grate floor. The security guards rushed in, swarming Thorne and cuffing him. Arya stumbled forward, rushing not to the captured hacker, but to Daniel. Her eyes were red, her voice barely a whisper, thick with unshed tears. Are you hurt, Daniel?" Daniel slowly stood up, brushing the dust from his shoulder. He looked tired, but entirely at peace. He simply smiled. "I'm fine, Ms. Sterling." Arya looked into his eyes, a deep, searching gaze. In them, she saw the profound, quiet peace of a man who had already faced his worst fear and survived. There was nothing left that could truly scare him, and that was a power she realized she needed more than any $8 billion system. The system was completely stable. The hacker was arrested, and Arya Sterling looked at Daniel Cole as if seeing a real man, a true protector, for the very first time. The immediate crisis was over. Arya didn't hold any formal meeting. Instead, she invited Daniel and Lily up to the CEO's sprawling minimalist office. The space was notoriously sacred, a place where deals were signed and rivals were crushed. Never before had a non-executive, especially a child, been allowed inside. Lily, completely unfazed, ran excitedly around the immense room, peering at the sleek, futuristic tech models. Her bright energy and genuine laughter instantly injected a soft, gentle warmth into the sterile, icy environment. Arya sat across from Daniel, the expensive leather chair suddenly feeling awkward beneath her. "Daniel," she began, dropping the formal address, "tell me again, why did you choose maintenance work? With your skills, you could be running a division or your own company." Daniel looked over at his daughter, who was trying to climb onto an ergonomic standing desk. "I wanted a job where I knew when I would finish. I wanted to be able to pick her up from school every day. I wanted to be in control of my time, not my title. I needed to put her first, always. Being a hero in a server room means nothing if I miss her bedtime story." Arya watched Lily giggle as she finally mastered the chair. Arya's eyes softened, a look that would have shocked every one of her board members. She had spent her entire life chasing status, money, and relentless ambition. Daniel had spent his chasing time with his daughter. Arya spoke her truth, a long, rare, and vulnerable moment of self-reflection. "I used to believe that great men were defined solely by their ambition and their relentless pursuit of power. I thought weakness was needing anything. You showed me that I was fundamentally wrong. The strongest man is the one who lives with purpose and lives for someone else." Daniel was quietly moved by her sincerity. This was not the cold CEO. This was a woman who had been gutted by betrayal and was finally choosing to heal. Arya then slid a formal document across the massive mahogany table. "This is a new contract, Chief of Systems Security and Integrity. You report only to me with a veto on all high-level security protocols. The salary is 12 times what you were earning. You set your own hours. Your primary responsibility is Lily." Daniel hesitated, gently shaking his head. "Ms. Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm ready to re-enter that world. I don't want to fail again." Arya stood up and took a firm step toward him. She looked directly into his eyes, her gaze clear, intense, and unwavering. "You are the most competent person I have ever met. You did not fail before. A system failed you. Daniel, you are the only person in this building I truly believe in. The only one I trust to guard my company, and perhaps myself." Lily, sensing the decision moment, ran over, clutching Daniel's leg. She beamed up at the intimidating CEO. "Please, Dad, work with Ms. Arya. She's nice. She gave me a whole box of markers." Daniel burst out laughing, gently ruffling Lily's hair. Aria watched the two of them, a genuine, heartwarming smile blooming on her face, a place she never thought it could grow. Daniel finally picked up the pen and signed the contract. All right, Ms. Sterling, I accept. Under one condition, I still get to fix the light bulbs in my office. Arya chuckled softly. Deal. Arya spoke quietly, leaning in close so only Daniel could hear. Her voice was thick with emotion. Thank you, Daniel, truly, for saving my company and for saving me from having to live with the ghost of my own past betrayal. 1 month later, Daniel Cole was no longer the maintenance man. He stepped into the executive wing, impeccably dressed in a sharp suit, his shoulders back, ready for his new life. The employees who had once scorned him now bowed their heads and offered genuine, respectful greetings. Arya was waiting at the door of his sleek new corner office. She offered him a rare, full smile. Welcome back, Director Cole. Your daughter's waiting. Lily was inside, coloring at a small, beautiful desk Arya had installed for her. She ran up to her father and then presented a freshly completed drawing. It was a picture of 3 colorful stick figures. Daniel, wearing a small tie, Lily with a huge smile, and Arya wearing a tiny crown. Written above the figures in Lily's careful 7-year-old handwriting was the question, family? Arya's cheeks flushed crimson when she saw the innocent, hopeful drawing. She was completely caught off guard by the sheer simplicity of the concept. Daniel asked his daughter, his voice cracking slightly with emotion. Why did you draw Mrs. Sterling with us, sweetie? Lily looked at Arya, then back at her father. Because she laughs when you are here, Daddy, and she loves you like I love you. Arya quickly turned away, pretending to adjust a file on her desk, trying to hide her profound, unexpected delight and the tear that almost escaped her eye. After work, Arya did something completely new. She invited Daniel and Lily out to dinner at a fantastic, relaxed Italian restaurant downtown. It was a personal, non-business invitation, a quiet date disguised as a family meal. At the table, Lily sat happily between the 2 adults, eating pasta, looking like the perfectly content daughter of 2 loving parents. They weren't talking about system integrity or corporate mergers. They were talking about Lily's school play and Daniel's favorite baseball team. Arya looked at Daniel. Her eyes were warm, open, and gentle, no longer the hard, cold eyes of the Glacier CEO. I haven't felt this calm in a decade, Arya confessed, stirring her food slowly. I thought this building and my life were only for war and competition. You brought quiet back. Daniel reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand, a gesture that felt comfortable and right. I didn't think I would ever find peace either. But seeing Lily happy and finding someone who understands what matters, that changes everything. Arya squeezed his hand back, her smile genuine. I agree. The 3 of them left the restaurant under the soft glow of the city streetlights. Arya held Lily's hand tightly, no longer the formidable CEO, just a woman holding a child's hand. Daniel walked on the other side, his presence a shield of quiet strength. They walked together, an unlikely trio, a hero, a reformed queen, and a brave little girl. A new family gently pieced together by shared tragedy and unwavering trust. If you believe stories like this, stories of quiet courage, undeniable truth, and profound human change, deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Single Dad Stories.